So what you're seeing right now is tcVISION's control board. This is a Windows utility that's able to handle the administration of the replication, as well as the initial load. So on the right-hand side here, this right panel, we have our active environment. And I have two managers. I have one here that happens to be running on an EC2 instance in the Amazon cloud. And I can double click on it. Yep, and there we go. And get some information about my manager running. With my operating system information, some information here about the configuration, version information, where it's running, what have you. I can do the same thing for my mainframe environment as well. And I can see here's my mainframe started task name and my operating system level, ZOS. We have our load library where the code base tcVISION's using, version information. I can also see logs as well. So I can click on these things and see whatever recent logs written off by the manager. Looks like a bunch of disconnects, reconnects from Chris. Here's as well some stats from a process that was running at one point, moving some data. We can also look at logs on the open platform side as well from our tcVISION manager. So really just kind of give us a single way to be able to connect to various systems without having to actually go and log on the mainframe for one and log on EC2 for the other. Now I can see this EC2 Linux manager has a couple processes running on it. These are actually live replication processes. One is capturing changes from DB2 and queuing them to what we call pipe. It's a file structure for captured changes. And then we have a second process that's going to be reading from that captured pipe and pushing off to a target. So I can double click on these things and see some stats in terms of records in, records out, as well as some information about the changes that have been gathered, how they're being transformed. On the left side here is our kind of our replication IDE, excuse me, where we have different pieces here for scripts for moving in data, initial loads, as well as our metadata repository, which is what we talked about earlier in the presentation. And there's other things in here we can see, data directories. You see information about logs that may exist on the EC2 side, or file system where we're queuing the changes. So we'll take a look here now at the metadata repository, and this is the piece which we have previously gone ahead and imported some metadata into. So I have two systems here. One is database, which is more of a hierarchical type database, and the other is DB2. And what you're looking at is the database 5.115. That's the file structure database uses, and then connected to this are various tables we've generated, all related to this one database file. On the DB2 side, if I scroll down here, we have more of a one-to-one type relationship between DB2 and the sources. So if I take a look now at the database one, and we can edit here from our repository, open up our repository editor, and you can see an example similar to what we saw in the presentation. We have our database file on the left here, and then we have our target table on the right. I can also pull down some other related fields as well on here. We have language. And if we scroll down a little farther, you can see we have some coded fields here indicating we have some repeating field structures, and we have language is also a repeating field. So tcVISION for this type of thing is maintaining a parent-child relationship between the table structures it creates. You can see we have little keys here to indicate what's the key values. We can just double click on any of these things here to see some data type information on the target side for our Postgres, demo, Lang employees, fixed character. Do the same thing here on the mainframe side. And we can see this is, fixed character length of 3. And then there's a subtable in here. And this is telling us here we're going to have 10 occurrences. And so you can do other things in terms of this product where there's options here if you have something normalized, and you can right click and there's options to break the subtable down. You can also click as well on the linkages between the various tables. So if I want to see the rules on name, for instance, if I want, I can set some type of condition to do filtering based on the data type here for name. So prim1 equals prim2. So I'm going to set the current field, and then I will see everything that's set to Chris. Pretty typical thing that folks do, or customers do, with this filtering of data is where there's record types involved. And so everything for record type A has to go to a particular target, and record B goes to a different one. Like I said, to be able to break the logical data types from a source, from a physical source such as vSAM into whatever their logical structures are. We can do this filtering both at the record level as well as the field level. And there's other types of filtering we have involved as well, greater than, less than, regular expression handler as well in here. So whatever changes you need to make. Now on the processing side, we have our wizard here that allows us to set various processing rules. So something that's pretty typical for customers to do is to set a value they want to have on each table. tcVISION generates a timestamp of whenever a change took place, either by tcVISION or the time that the change took place on the mainframe side, or the time that it was actually committed by the mainframe application. So these are things you can track within the product. If you're doing that, the journal table replication I mentioned earlier, we have a function here, type of operation, that's going to track, to tell you what the transaction type was on the source side, insert, update, or delete. And there's other things in here as well. So we can do lookups to various pieces of exit code. We can do SQL lookups, do various, character string manipulation. So left, right parts of substring, change, replace based on either a single word or a single character, regular expressions and SQL comments. As tcVISION, which we'll see in a little bit here, is capturing changes from the mainframe side. It's also writing off information about the transaction as well, what the job ID was, what the source type was. So it's actually able to get these things here, kind of the meta information surrounding the transaction, and push those to the source side, or to the target side.